The scorching sun beat down on the city streets as Camila walked quickly, her feet throbbing with each step. Her simple dress was already stuck to her body with sweat, and the bag she was carrying full of resumes seemed to weigh twice as much. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Her two young children were waiting for her at home, and the empty refrigerator was a cruel reminder that time was against her. Just one more place, just one more, she muttered to herself, trying to ignore her exhaustion. Ever since she separated from Bruno, things had fallen apart completely. He simply disappeared when he found out she was pregnant with their second child. 2 years passed and not a single call, not a single cent of child support. Camila had to make do, taking odd jobs, selling sweets, cleaning, but the money was never enough. As she hurriedly crossed the street, she almost tripped when she heard a blaring horn. A car braked abruptly just inches away from her. The driver swore something that she didn't even process. She just lowered her head and kept going, holding back her tears. It wasn't time to weaken. She went into a small, empty cafe, sitting at the last table to catch her breath. She ordered a glass of water and opened her bag, taking out her crumpled resumes. So many places had already rejected her. That's when her cell phone vibrated. Her heart raced. Had someone finally answered? Hello? She answered nervously, trying to keep her voice steady. Camila? This is Ms. Marissa, your mother's friend. I'm calling because I heard you're looking for a job. She sat up in her seat, her heart full of hope. Yes, anything, Ms. Marissa. I really need to work. I have a contact who can help you. An acquaintance of mine is looking for someone to take care of her bedridden husband. The salary is good, but the work requires dedication. If she's interested, I can pass your contact on to her. Camila bit her lip. She didn't know anything about taking care of the sick, but she couldn't refuse. Yes, I'm up for it. Please give me my contact information. Great. She'll call you later today. Camila hung up and felt her chest tighten. Could this be the fresh start she needed so much? Camila held the phone for a few seconds after hanging up, as if trying to absorb what had just happened. Finally, after so many closed doors, an opportunity had arisen. Would it work out this time? She paid the bill with the last coin she had in her wallet and left the cafe with quick steps. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but she didn't know if it was from anxiety or fear. Her biggest fear was not being prepared for the job. Taking care of a bedridden man? What exactly did that mean? As she walked towards the bus stop, her mind was invaded by memories from the past. She still remembered the day she found out she was pregnant with her second child. At the time, she believed that Bruno, the father of her children, would be happy. But instead, he left the house, saying he couldn't handle one more responsibility. He simply disappeared. Since then, her life had become a constant battle. Between diapers, sleepless nights, and low-paying jobs, she barely had time for herself. Now a new opportunity had appeared before her, and she couldn't miss it. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was an unknown number. With a deep sigh, she answered. Hello. Her voice was a little hesitant. Good afternoon, Camila. My name is Helena. I heard you're interested in the caregiver position. Can we talk? Camila pressed the phone to her ear, trying to contain her excitement. Sure, I'm available. Great. Can you come to my house tonight? I'd rather interview in person. Yes, sure. Can you give me the address? Helena gave her the coordinates and hung up. Camila quickly typed it into the GPS and almost dropped her phone when she saw the location. It was one of the most upscale neighborhoods in the city. She swallowed hard. What was a rich woman doing hiring someone like her? Fear and insecurity tried to take over her, but she forced herself to ignore them. This was a chance, and she couldn't waste it. Now, all that was left was to find out who this mysterious man she was going to work for was, and why Helena seemed so cold when she talked about him. The taxi stopped in front of a huge iron gate. Camila swallowed hard. That was it. She looked to the side and saw the huge houses on that street, each one more luxurious than the last. She had never set foot in a neighborhood like that. She adjusted her blouse, took a deep breath, and pressed the intercom. A few seconds later, a female voice sounded on the other side. "Who is it?" "Camila, I came for the interview." The gate opened slowly. Camila walked through the impeccable garden, feeling out of place. "What am I doing here?" But she had no time for doubts. A tall, well-dressed woman was waiting for her at the door. Helena. Her serious and analytical look made Camila feel small. "Come in," she said without smiling. The inside of the house was even more impressive. A huge chandelier hung from the ceiling, and the furniture looked like it had come out of a magazine. But the room was cold and lifeless. Camila felt a shiver. "I'll be blunt, Camila. My husband, Ricardo, is in serious condition. He can't speak, he can't move. I need someone to take care of him at night, since the nurses only come during the day. Do you think you can do it?" Camila hesitated. She had never taken care of a sick person before. I can learn. I need this job." Helena watched her for a moment, then nodded. "Come, I'll introduce you to him." Camila followed her down a long hallway to a large, dark room. In the center, a bed surrounded by medical equipment, and in it, a motionless man. His face was handsome, but haggard. His eyes were open, but they expressed no emotion. Ricardo. Camila felt a lump in her throat. He seemed trapped inside his own body. "You can talk to him if you want. He understands everything, he just can't answer," Helena said, crossing her arms. Camila approached, hesitant. "Hi, Mr. Ricardo. My name is Camila. I think I'll be taking care of you from now on." For a second, she had the impression that his eyes lit up, as if he was trying to communicate. "The employee's room is next door. You start today," Helena announced, as if that was just a detail. Camila nodded, but a strange feeling grew inside her. Why did Helena seem so indifferent to her husband's condition? And, more than that, why did she feel like that man desperately wanted to tell her something? The clock was almost midnight when Camila adjusted the pillow on the bed in the small room that had been assigned to her. The day had been long, but her mind was restless. Something in that house didn't seem right. She turned to the side, trying to sleep, but her thoughts wouldn't leave her. Why did Helena talk about Ricardo as if he were a burden? The man was completely still, unable to speak or react, but his eyes, there was something in them, something that seemed to be asking for help. The silence in the mansion was disturbing. Camila got up slowly, putting on her slippers. She decided to take a walk through the hallways, just to get to know the house better. Maybe that would help her relax. She went through the living room and then the kitchen. Everything seemed impeccable but soulless. Such a beautiful place, but lifeless. It was then that she noticed a half-open door at the end of the hallway. The office. She hesitated for a second. It shouldn't be there, but something was pulling her. If Helena caught her rummaging through things, she would definitely be fired on the spot. But something inside Camila screamed that she needed to look. She slowly pushed the door open. The light from the lamp illuminated a desk full of papers. With her heart racing, her eyes scanned the piled-up documents. One name stood out, Ricardo Albuquerque. She picked up the folder and began to leaf through it quickly. Medical exams, reports, medical certificates. Her gaze stopped on a word that made her blood run cold. Toxic substances found in the body. Camila felt a chill run down her spine. What did that mean? She turned over a few more pages and found a report signed by a doctor. Patient showed significant worsening after administration of nighttime medication. Her heart began to pound in her chest. Was it possible? Among the papers, she found a handwritten note with fine, organized handwriting. Doses adjusted as planned. Soon, no reaction whatsoever. Camila brought her hand to her mouth, feeling a lump form in her throat. Someone was poisoning Ricardo. But who? And why? Camila felt her heart race. This couldn't be real. Her hands were shaking as she reread those notes. Doses adjusted. No reaction whatsoever. This meant that Ricardo wasn't just sick. Someone was deliberately making his condition worse. She felt a shiver run down her spine. She had to get out of there before someone caught her messing with the documents. Carefully, she put everything back in its place and left the office in silence, closing the door behind her. She took a deep breath and went back to her room, but sleep wouldn't come. What would she do with that information? If she told Helena, what if she was involved? If she went to the police, would she have any proof? Everything seemed confusing. When the first rays of sunlight appeared, Camila had already made her decision. She would keep an eye on everything that happened in that house. The first step, observe. During the day, she noticed that the nurses who came to take care of Ricardo didn't interact much with him. They administered medication, changed bandages, but avoided eye contact, as if they already knew he was doomed. But at night it was different. Around 10 p.m., Helena entered Ricardo's room carrying a small bottle. Camila hid behind the door, watching every move. Helena took a syringe and withdrew a clear liquid from the bottle. She then walked over to Ricardo, lifted his sleeve, and injected the substance into his arm. "Good night, dear," she murmured. She smiled coldly, leaving the room soon after. Camila felt her stomach churn. That was it. She waited a few minutes, making sure that Helena had left. Then, she hurried to Ricardo. His eyes were open, but something had changed. Before, even though they were still, his eyes carried a glow of awareness. Now, they were vacant, lifeless. She took his hand and squeezed it lightly. No response. Helena was poisoning her own husband. Camila stood up quickly. She had to stop her. But how? For now, there was only one thing she could do. The next night, when Helena brought the bottle again, Camila made sure to dispose of the substance before Ricardo received it. And for the first time, he blinked, as if he knew what she had done. Camila barely slept that night. What was happening in that house? Her heart was still racing from what she had done. Switching Ricardo's medicine had been a huge risk, but something told her that she needed to protect him. The next morning, she entered his room earlier than usual. She approached him slowly, trying not to wake him. But when she looked into his eyes, something different happened. He was watching her. This time, it didn't seem like he was just looking through her. Camila felt a shiver run down her spine. He knew. "You understand what I'm saying, don't you?" she asked softly, approaching the bed. His eyes shone, and she had the feeling he wanted to answer. Camila felt a lump in her throat. How could a man who had once been strong and full of life be there, unable to move, dependent on someone who clearly didn't want the best for him? It was then that, suddenly, a subtle smell invaded her nostrils. A familiar aroma. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to place it. Basil. Her heart raced. That smell, she had smelled it before. It was like a movie playing in her mind. The sound of metal. Twisting. The impact. The fire consuming the car. The pain in her body. And then, someone pulling her. A dark-haired man, his face covered in soot and oil. That smell was on him. Camila pulled away slowly, her breath shallow. It couldn't be a coincidence. She leaned back again and looked at Ricardo more closely. His eyes, the structure of his face, everything seemed familiar. Her mind was spinning. The man who had saved her in the accident. Could it be him? She swallowed hard, her skin crawling. "It was you," she murmured, almost voiceless. Ricardo blinked slowly. That was all she needed to understand. He had saved her once. Now, it was her turn to save him. Camila felt a chill run down her spine. Ricardo was the man who had saved her from the burning car. And now, he was there, helpless, trapped in an unresponsive body. What cruel fate was this? Her heart was pounding in her chest. She couldn't ignore it. Ricardo had risked his own life to save her in the past. Now, it was her turn to repay him. But how? The only thing she was sure of was that Helena couldn't find out that she knew everything. If she was willing to poison her own husband, what would she do if she found out that Camila was interfering? That night, she waited for everyone to fall asleep and went back to Ricardo's room. "I know you were the one who saved me," she whispered, holding his hand. "And I'm going to get you out of here. I promise." His eyes blinked slowly. It was a cry for help. Camila took a deep breath and left the room. She needed to come up with a plan. But first, she needed proof. The first step, getting help. The next day, she waited for the right moment and approached Felipe, one of the house's security guards. He was more discreet than the others and always showed a certain discomfort towards Helena. "Felipe, I need to talk to you," she said quietly, pulling him to a corner of the garden. He frowned. "What happened? Have you worked here for a long time?" "2 years. But why do you ask?" Camila looked around, making sure no one was listening. "I found out that Ricardo isn't just sick." Felipe's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" She took a deep breath and told him everything. What she saw in the office, the medical reports, the adjusted doses, and most importantly, how Ricardo seemed to be regaining some consciousness now that she had changed his medications. The security guard ran his hand over his face, clearly disturbed. "That makes sense," he murmured. "Did you suspect it already?" Camila asked, feeling her heart race. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "I always thought it was strange how his condition got worse so quickly. But who am I to question him? Helena is in charge here. Felipe, I need to get him out of this house. If we wait any longer, it might be too late." Felipe looked around nervously. "If I help, I'll be screwed. But if you're right, I can't just sit around." Camila felt relief mixed with fear. "We'll need proof. We can start by taking the medicine Helena gives him and testing it in a lab." Felipe nodded. "I know someone who can do it, but we have to act fast." Camila knew she was treading on dangerous ground. But Ricardo couldn't wait any longer. The escape plan had begun, and Helena couldn't suspect anything. Camila felt her heart pounding in her chest. Now that Felipe was by her side, they had to act fast. Every minute that passed, Ricardo was in danger. That night, after Helena went up to her room, Felipe discreetly entered the office and took one of the vials of the medicine she was administering to Ricardo. Camila waited for him in the kitchen, tense, her ears alert for any strange sounds. "Here it is," he whispered, handing her the vial. She took the bottle in her hands, feeling a shiver. That substance could be proof that Ricardo was being poisoned. "I have a contact who can analyze this. But it takes time," Felipe explained. "We don't have time," Camila replied. "Helena might realize that something is wrong." Felipe took a deep breath. "What if we go straight to his doctor?" Camila hesitated. What if Helena had influence over the hospital? It was a risk, but what other option did they have? The plan goes into action the next day. Felipe and Camila came up with a plan. Camila would take a day's shift to shadow the nurses, while Felipe would try to contact a trusted doctor. When the first nurse arrived, Camila realized he was about to administer the same medication to Ricardo. Her heart raced. "Doctor, can I ask you something?" she said, trying to sound casual. The nurse looked at her suspiciously. "What is it?" She hesitated, but she couldn't back down anymore. "This medication, is it really helping Ricardo? Because ever since he started taking it, it seems like he's gotten worse." The nurse frowned, as if he was thinking. "Honestly, I wonder that too. But I'm just an employee. I do what I'm told." Camila bit her lip. "If I can get a doctor to evaluate Ricardo, can you help me make sure he gets an independent exam?" The nurse hesitated for a moment, but then he sighed. "I'll close my eyes for a few minutes. But that's all I can do." That's what she needed. The truth comes out. At the end of the day, Felipe finally found a doctor he could trust. The next day, Ricardo would be examined. When the doctor examined Ricardo, his expression darkened. He has clear signs of poisoning. Camila felt her stomach turn. Can you prove it? The doctor nodded. Let's get him out of here now. Felipe and the doctor arranged for Ricardo to be transferred to a private hospital without telling Helena. It was now or never. Helena finds out the truth. In the middle of the night, when Helena realized that Ricardo was not in the house, a scream of fury echoed through the halls. Where is he? Camila stood her ground. He's safe. And now the police are involved. Helena's face paled. You don't know who you're messing with. No. Camila crossed her arms. So tell me, what do you think the police will do when they find out what you were doing with your own husband? Helena had no answer. She just stood there pale, watching her empire crumble. Hours later, the police knocked on the mansion's door. Helena Albuquerque, you are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. And at that moment, Camila knew she had won this battle. But the fight was not over yet. Now, Ricardo needed to fight to get his life back. Camila watched Helena being taken away by the police, still stunned by everything that had happened. She had succeeded, but at the same time, she knew that this was only part of the battle. Now, Ricardo needed to recover. The doctors assured her that, without the doses of poison he had been receiving, his body would have a chance to react. But no one knew for sure if he would ever walk, talk, or even recover all his movements. During the first few days in the hospital, Camila stayed by his side. I know you can hear me, Ricardo, she whispered, holding his hand. You survived all of this. Don't give up now. She noticed his eyes blinking slowly, as if he was trying to communicate. The doctor started physical therapy sessions, and Camila followed every step of the process. At first, he couldn't even move his fingers. But after 2 weeks, a small miracle happened. Ricardo moved his index finger. Camila was next to him when she saw the subtle movement. Her heart raced. You did it, she exclaimed, holding his hand tightly. He tried to move his lips, but the words wouldn't come out. Still, for the first time, she saw something different in his eyes. A spark of hope. As the days went by, his movements improved. First his fingers, then his arms. When he was able to lift his hand on his own, Camila couldn't hold back the tears. You're amazing, Ricardo. He smiled. A small, tired smile, but real. A bond that goes beyond gratitude. Throughout the process, Camila and Ricardo spent more time together. She read to him, told him stories about her children, about her struggle to survive. And, little by little, she realized that something was changing inside her. It wasn't just gratitude. There was something more. One night, Ricardo, already able to move his arms with more control, held her hand. Thank you, he murmured with difficulty. Camila felt her heart race. You saved me first? He smiled slightly. Their eyes met for a moment longer than usual. It was a silent moment, but full of meaning. Camila looked away, confused by her own feelings. She couldn't be falling in love. But, at the same time, how could she deny the connection that grew between them every day? She took a deep breath. There was still a lot to resolve. But, at that moment, she just held his hand and smiled. Because she knew they still had a long way to go, together. Time passed. Ricardo was getting better every day. His recovery surprised the doctors, but Camila knew it wasn't just a miracle of science. It was the strength of someone who truly wanted to live. Now he could sit up on his own, move his arms more firmly, and, with help, take his first steps again. Every little step forward was a victory. Camila was by his side during every physical therapy session, encouraging, supporting, and being his strength when he faltered. I would never have made it without you, Ricardo said one afternoon, as he tried to hold a pen to sign a document for the first time in months. She smiled. I just did for you what you did for me. He looked up, watching her carefully. "And what does that mean for both of us, Camila?" Her heart raced. She knew the answer. It wasn't just a bond of gratitude. It wasn't just friendship. It was love. But fear still haunted her. After everything he had been through, after so much suffering, did he have the right to be happy? Ricardo noticed her hesitation. He touched her hand lightly, with a caress that made her shiver. "You're scared, but so am I. And yet I want to try. I want to be with you if you want to be with me." Camila took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She smiled and intertwined her fingers with his. "I do." A new beginning together months later, Ricardo returned home. Not to the cold, lifeless mansion where he was almost destroyed, but to a new home, built with the desire to start over. Camila and her children went with him. Now, they were a family. Together, they learned to laugh again, to enjoy the little moments, and, most importantly, to believe that destiny can bring us together in the most unexpected ways. In the end, Ricardo had saved Camila first, but she was the one who truly saved him. And so, two hearts marked by pain found a new chance to love. Because, in the end, love always finds a way.